Hi, Karen. How are you this evening?
Thank you.
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
Uh, uh,
Started, and then we'll get to you right under mayor's comments.
Oh, no problem, thank you. And I'll be able to share my screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, good evening and welcome to the City of North Pole regular meeting. Today is June 16th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Jordan Schuster,
Here.
Benny Williams,
Here.
David Brandt,
Here.
Jeff Jacobson has an excused absence, Santa Claus,
Here.
Anton Keller,
Here.
and Mayor Church.
Here. Please stand, remove your hats, and our clerk will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here this evening. Thank you for the wonderful weather. Thank you for, and to all those fathers who are out there who do their very best for their children, regardless of the circumstances, and truly do try their best. And thank you to the moms out there who do the dad's work. We thank you for the blessings that we have and hope that we can move forward this evening with peace and love. In your most holy name we pray. Amen. That brings us to action item 4, the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
I will second that.
Move to amend the agenda.
State your amendment, please.
I'd like to consent item 12A of new business, Fairbanks North Star Borough, FNSB in the city of North Pole. Emergency medical services, ambulance contract renewal and amendment number 1, as well as item 12C, which is request the council AMLR radio contract renewal 0 cost.
Second.
May I just get a point of clarification? I heard Santa first the agenda. I didn't get who seconded that motion.
I believe that was me.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor seconded the approval.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have Anton has consented, and was there a second on the Santa? Thank you for that housekeeping item. On the item as amended, Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
and Mayor Church.
Yes.
On the item, the agenda for this evening, Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
and Mayor Church.
Yes. Please, councilmen, speak into your mic for those that are online and listening. Thank you, sir.
I think we might, I would like to also consent an item, but I think, did I miss the window for that? Okay.
Madam Clerk, can we amend that
Yeah, if you
amendment?
just go ahead and say you would like to amend the agenda. What would you like to consent?
Item 12B, which was the
DSIP grant?
yeah, the DSIP grant.
Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other amendments?
Discussion. Is there a discussion for that consent? Is that?
No, but
Just
I was going to
straightforward.
take a roll call.
There you go.
Yeah. DSIP was Schuster seconded by Church?
By myself.
Keller, thank you.
Keller.
Okay, on the amended agenda for this evening, Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
and Mayor Church.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Busy start here. That brings us on to approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 2nd. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please?
Move to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2025.
I will second that.
Was there any discussion?
Call the roll, please.
On the minutes from the June 2nd meeting, Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Claus, and Mayor Turch.
Yes. Okay, that brings us on to communications of the mayor, and I will step aside for the auditor's presentation. Thank you for joining us, Karen.
Thank you, Mayor Church. Fellow council members, my name is Karen Tarver, and I'm an audit partner with LG Rayfield. We're a CPA firm located in Juneau, Alaska, and this is our second year doing your external audit. And it's not just myself. Obviously, I have a team of individuals working on your audit. We start, I don't know if you'd call it bugging, but we start to, making contact with your finance department about 3 months ahead of your year end, and then periodically leading up to your year end, and then really our audit efforts start about 2 months after year end when they have what we call the close of the year. So they've basically done all the adjustments they need to your books and records, and those are handed over to us for us to do our audit. And we do also prepare your financial statements from your books and records as an additional service besides the audit. And just a reminder there that the financial statements are management's financial statements. And so I'll kind of walk you through the two different documents and touch on that a little bit more, just as far as the responsibilities of the auditors versus management. If there are questions, you can feel free to interrupt me as I go, or we can also hold them till the end. And I'm going to try to keep this high level and concise, because I know you have a lot on your agenda. But what I'm going to start with is the letter to the board. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I know that you guys have paper copies, but I figure by sharing my screen, it'll prevent you maybe from having to flip back and forth between pages to some degree. So again, what I'm starting with is the smaller of the two documents, and it's called the letter to the board. And hold on, I didn't get the, hopefully you see it. Do you see the letter to the board on your screen?
We can see it, yes.
Thank you. I don't have that. Usually it outlines everything in green. I know which screen I'm sharing, so I wanted to make sure. So again, I want to start with basically talking about our responsibility with a financial statement audit. So again, we're opining on the basic financial statements. We're expressing an opinion whether your funds, the major funds as well as the aggregate non-major, are what we call materially correct. And those are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So in plain English, what that really means is we're making sure that your financial statements are presenting accurately the information from your last fiscal year. And that reporting has to be done in accordance with how it's called government auditing or government accounting standards board, GASB. They dictate how governments have to do their financial statements and how they account for transactions. And so we have to use certain audit standards, including generally accepted auditing standards, as well as what's called government auditing standards, to do our audits. And so we start planning, as I said, a few months ahead of when we do our work, and we didn't have any difficulties this year. The preparation stayed right on schedule as we had planned. Last year we'd had some delays, but this year we were able to get everything in the time we had agreed upon. We do assist, as I mentioned, helping management put together the bound financial statements that you have. That is what's called a non-attest service. So it's outside the scope of the audit. And as a result of that, we have to make sure that we have applied, this is the top of page 2 of the letter of the board, we've applied to what's called safeguards to make sure that we're maintaining our independence. So obviously we can't audit our own work. We can't take on the role of management. And so while we take your books and records and put them into the format, a lot of those decision making is done by management as far as how they want to include information. And then we're auditing whether that is correct or not. And then we also have built-in controls to make sure that we have an audit independent of doing the audit work, review everything at the end to make sure we did everything we needed to in accordance with our standards. We do report back to you certain things, and that's the letter to the board, making sure that we've communicated certain things, such as the significant accounting practices or policies used by management. And so there were 2 changes this year. As I mentioned, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB, issued 2 new statements this year that had to be implemented. Those are reflected here in the middle of the screen. It's Statement 100, which is accounting changes and error corrections, as well as 101, compensated absences. Management did procure the services of another accounting firm to help with the implementation of the compensated absences, and the Statement 100 was really more just a way of how you have to present information in your financial statements if you have changes or errors. So we also make sure we're disclosing to you any significant estimates or required disclosures. So the estimates that are made by management that we audit that have the most significance to your audited financial statement amounts are the big ones are related to your share of the pension plans that the state maintains, and you have a part of both the pension plans and the OPEB, or other post-employment benefit plans. And so the assets and liabilities and related accounts for those come mostly from the records of the state has those plans audited, and they have reports that show what the city's portion of those are. And so that is the basis for those estimates that are in your financial statements. There's also an estimate of your healthcare cost. And again, those we look at how that estimate's created, and it uses the plan maximums. And we feel like that is a reasonable basis for that amount. And then under, as I mentioned, GASB 101, compensated absences, a lot of that, the estimate portion related to that is looking at the accrued leave that employees have and looking at how much is expected to be used in the short term or the long term. And so we went through that with management and felt like they had a good basis for the amounts that were reported. I'm not touching on every single thing in here. You guys can read this at your convenience, but just touching on a few of the key things. So one of the things we're also required to report back to you is if we had any significant audit adjustments. And so we did have one, the first bullet point here, which was looking at your water and sewer enterprise fund. It turned out there was some construction in progress costs that had been actually, it looks like the projects were completed back as far as 2017, and they had never been moved from being a work in progress to a completed project. What happens when that project gets completed is it should move to whatever class of asset it is. So whether it's a building or a piece of equipment, and then it gets depreciated over its useful life. And that hadn't happened. And so there was a prior year adjustment for $299,080, and that reflects the depreciation that should have been taken in those years since those assets were placed into service through this year. And so as a result, your beginning balance in that fund, as well as the accumulated depreciation in that fund, were adjusted by that amount. The second adjustment related to the legal settlement, as you guys are well aware of, you had the $3 million legal settlement, which was net of $1 million of legal fees. When that got recorded on the books, only the $2 million, the net amount, got recorded. And GASB dictates that you need to show both sides of that. So you need to show that you actually got $3 million and you essentially paid out $1 million as well. And so that was an adjustment that we made. So again, management had given us the records. They just had the $2 million shown And so we proposed an adjustment and they accepted it to gross it back up to show the 3 million received and the 1 million paid out. We did have a couple other adjustments. We call these past adjustments, and they're ones that while we brought them to management's attention, they decided not to have us post them. And in talking them, we were fine with that. We don't feel like they materially misstate your financial statements. One is the timing of when interest income is recorded. The amount received in December doesn't post till January, and this has been done historically that way, that basically you're just always a month behind in recording your interest income. So you still have 12 months of interest income in every year. There's not a reason necessarily to accrue it back. It's just that accounting and reporting standards require that you are supposed to accrue it into the period in which it was earned. But again, we looked at it, you have 12 months, it's been handled consistently, and we felt like it didn't significantly change your financial statements. The second item, a lot of verbiage here. The gist of it is the grantor lets you claim for grant purposes amounts that have been what's called obligated. So you've placed the order, but you hadn't received the goods yet. So from an accounting and reporting standpoint, that doesn't become a liability, doesn't become accounts payable until you have those goods in hand. And so under accounting and reporting, for financial statements, you wouldn't show an expense and you wouldn't show revenue earned yet for that. For grant reporting, they allow you to count as an eligible expense and also that you've earned the revenue. And so we worked with management on this, and they really wanted to go ahead and reflect that in the books. Again, it's a timing issue in that the order was received shortly after year end, that the funds were recognized as being earned by the grantor as of year end. And so we agreed with management that that could be reflected in fiscal year 24 rather than waiting till 25.
Can I get you on a quick pause, Karen, just so
Yeah.
that I can, so for the $299 or $299,080 closeout, that was from Moose Creek. That Moose Creek project that wasn't ever properly closed out, and we have are working to set things in place to address that happening in the future. For the extra December month, the 12-month deal, we had that, so that wasn't a huge concern because we had the 12 months. The purchase of the water meters through the ARPA funds is what she's referring to about we ordered them, but they weren't actually received until after the new year. So we'll see this again, I believe, in our next audit next year when that comes out. That may be a finding, may not, but we'll see it again. I don't think we're done with that. Are we, Karen?
Actually, that particular funding, you are all done spending. So there's no additional funding for this particular grant that this was related to.
Okay, super. Thank you for the quick break.
No worries. Yeah, please jump in. I tend to just keep going. So, so I'm gonna jump now to what's called our findings, or so they are classified. There's different classifications of findings. You can have a material weakness, where that's the easiest way to explain that is it's something that the internal controls didn't prevent, or we feel like would not prevent something significant from possibly being reported incorrectly in your financial statements. Or you could have a significant deficiency where we, again, feel that the controls may not be sufficient to detect or correct a misstatement, but it doesn't rise to the level of material weakness. So it's less likely to have a material misstatement that warrants enough concern on our part, or a financial risk, essentially reporting risk that we're communicating to you. So as we've already talked about, we had the adjustment for the 299,000, and that is essentially our finding 2024-001. Again, there wasn't internal controls in place to make sure that as a CIP was finished, that this was moved into the correct accounts and depreciation started. And so that it was an interesting thing because last year when we did the audit, we asked, was there any change in CIPs? And management said no. And in this year, in digging through a little bit more, we're like, well, why is this account not changing? And when we went back and looked at it, it hadn't changed since 2017. And so again, it was took some digging and some time to make sure that we had management had identified exactly what those costs were, and they now have been moved into the capital asset accounts and being depreciated. And then we do a federal single audit for you, and that is triggered for the fact that you're expending greater than $750,000 of federal assistance. And as a result of that audit, we also look at internal controls over compliance. And this particular finding relates to it's part of the procurement requirements that you're required to follow when you're expending federal money. And that is, it's called the suspension or debarment check. And so you're required before you enter into a contract, a procurement contract with a vendor, to either check or have wording in that contract with them that they are asserting that they are fine, that they're not suspended or disbarred from doing contracts for federally funded projects, essentially, or providing goods that are being paid for with federal dollars. And so what we found with the turnover that has occurred in the city director of city services position, some of the documentation we couldn't be located. And so there also is a little bit, I think in the past, maybe a little bit of unclear responsibility delegation as far as, was this finance department's responsibility or was this director of city services? And so again, we couldn't verify that this check had happened. Now, subsequent to that, during our audit, the check was done, the vendor was fine, there were no issues. But again, our requirement with compliance and is looking at, did you have controls to make sure that this happened? And without the evidence being retained, there's no way to really say that you had a control in place. We did look at other procurements, and in some case, we saw that it had been done with other contracts, but for this particular one, the documentation couldn't be located. So I'll pause there if there's any question on that finding.
We're good. Carry on. Thank you.
Great. So last year you had, I would say, a large material weakness, and that was again related to your whole kind of close process and general ledger. A lot of that stemmed from the transition of your accounting software. As you know, that was a multi-year project you guys were implementing, and it did not go smoothly. And there was a lot of issues with still lingering as we did last year's audit. And we felt like those had been significantly improved this year. The close went much smoother. There's always room for improvement, as always, but the level of preparedness was much better, and we felt like this had been resolved for this year. We also include in our letter to the board what we call other internal control matters, and these aren't findings. These are opportunities for strengthening your internal controls or operating effectiveness that we discuss with management, and then we include them here so that you're aware of our discussion with management. And sometimes they may require city council work on them as well. One of them, and it's probably going to be more related to your budget cycle and how you approach this, is for your debt service fund. That is continued, the deficit in that has continued to grow, in that the special assessments to cover your debt service on the bond within that fund is not sufficient. And so as a result, the debt payment that's being made out far exceeds the revenue coming in. And so it it will be slowly taken care of as receipts come in. Your last payment on that bond is this year, fiscal 25. It's just, again, it's a large deficit. We just want to make sure that our recommendation is that you're looking at that as part of your budget cycle and thinking about how you want to address it going forward, whether it's a transfer from the operating fund to cover that deficit, or again, just how that's going to be addressed with time. Our second item here, and it relates to the compliance finding that we had related to the procurement, the suspended debarred, is that uniform guidance. So uniform guidance is the federal guidance on how you have to administer their grants or their federal assistance, basically. And it has changed significantly. It just had another large change this year, actually October of 2024. And so it's a really good time to go back and review it again, review it against your policies and procedures. As you continue to get federal funding and federal assistance, and also in light of the federal funding freeze and maybe the scarcity of federal funding, we do feel there's going to be increased scrutiny on your federal spending. And so it's a good time to go back and make sure that you essentially are reviewing what your policies procedures have compared to uniform guidance, and making sure that you have internal controls in place to ensure compliance. And one of the things, and it's not written here, but I know the mayor and I talked about it, and I talked to the finance director about it as well, is making sure that you have someone that is essentially your compliance go-to person. Because there's a lot of strings attached when you accept federal money. And some of them can be very maybe nitpicky, such as the suspended and debarred, and making sure you have proof that you took care of that. But as the auditor, when we come in, we have to look at it. And a lot of it is very black or white. Did you do it or not do it? And so to prevent future findings and issues with federal funding, again, we just feel like this is the time to go back and review your policies and procedures. Uniform guidance is very specific. It does require written policies over several different areas. I've listed here 3 where I know there have been changes. And so these are 3 where I would probably start with doing your reviews and making sure that you have addressed that for any updates that need to be made. And I'll pause there again.
Please, Santa Claus.
Hi, good evening. Speaking of the federal grants and compliance, I'm wondering what happens for the future, if you could give us a little bit of a heads up on how we would internally handle the prospect and actuality of clawbacks for federal
I
grants.
think that is a question a lot of people are asking. I think that making sure that you are not expending federal funds. If you have advances on federal funds, making sure that they really are being maintained, because in case you feel like you are going to have to repay any of it. That's probably one step. I think there's so much uncertainty right now. I feel like I don't really necessarily have any concrete advice to provide, other than just, again, maybe assigning someone or developing that monitoring of what's happening, so that you can react quickly to it, what's happening in the federal assistance kind of arena, and really working closely with your resources. AML, I know is probably monitoring the situation as well, and providing guidance. There's also there's a GFOA, which is a Government Finance Officers Association. And so again, that might be a resource for your finance department to look into joining them if they're not a part of that organization. Because again, there's updates that are provided pretty frequently, as well as different discussion forums that are addressing these issues that not just you are facing, right? Many are in the same boat. So sorry, I don't have an exact answer for you, but those are kind of some of my recommendations.
Thank you.
All right,
Councilman-
I've used up my 20 minutes. I said I was going to try to go fast, and I know I'm about 20 minutes, but I would like to switch over to your financial statements quickly and run through those if I can have a little bit more time.
Yes, please. What page are we headed to?
All right, so it's the second document, so it's the larger of the two, basically. And so I'm going to go through this pretty quick. It's about 76 pages long, so I'm gonna just kind of touch on a few of the things. So our opinion letter, as we mentioned, that is what you want from us. We issued what's called unmodified opinions over your financial statements, and that is what you want. So our second paragraph here is our opinion paragraph. Again, it mentions that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material specs, your financial position of governmental activities, business type, each major fund, and the aggregate non-major, in accordance with the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. So again, that's what you want. It's called the unmodified opinion. We touched briefly on the basis of our opinion, which we use the two different auditing standards. We also have already touched a little bit on the responsibilities of management, that these are their financial statements. They, while we assist in the drafting of them, they ultimately accept the responsibility, and they're also responsible for making sure that the internal controls are in place to make sure that information is captured correctly for reporting purposes. There's lots of information in here regarding the auditor's responsibilities over the financial statements. You can read that later. We've kind of touched on a lot of it. There is also included, so in your financial statements, you also have what's called required supplementary information. This is primarily pension and OPEB schedules that are required to be included with your financial statements. And we don't issue an opinion on them, but we do look at them and make sure that they are consistent with the rest of your financial information. There's also what's called supplementary information. Specifically for you, that is additional budget and actual schedule of the general fund, as well as some supplementary combining schedules, and then also your schedule of expenditures of federal awards is what's called a supplemental information. And we don't issue an opinion over that, except for we do, and it's called the in relation opinion. It is the final sentence here that the supplementary information is fairly stated in all material respects in relation to the basic financial statements as a whole. So again, we're doing audit work over it to make sure that it's in accordance and in agreement essentially with the basic financial statements. And I mentioned already, we use government auditing standards. We have the findings that we've already talked through are reported in that letter, which is attached with your audited financial statements. And that is this letter, which is on page 62. It goes through and describes, similar to our audit opinion letter, it talks about internal controls over reporting. And again, we're not testing internal controls to issue an opinion over them, but to plan our audit and to make sure we've identified where there could be risk in misstatement of the financial statements amount or compliance. And then we are also then opining on what's called your federal major programs. So this is your schedule of federal awards. And the two opinions that we audited this last year were your coronavirus state and federal fiscal recovery funds. And that was your ARPA money is how you often refer to it. And then you also had a Water Smart grant. And so these were the two grants that we audited. and we issue another report, similar to your financial statement opinion report. This is an opinion report over those two programs. And we issued, again, what's unmodified opinion, which is what you want. So you complied, the city complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements referred to that could have a direct and material effect on those major programs. And then within this letter, we have the reference out to finding number 2, as we referred to earlier, and you can read through it in its entirety if you want. It goes through the different aspects of the finding in your packet. And then, so it also has finding number 1, which was the CIP fund capitalization. And each of our findings also includes a recommendation, basically, and we've talked through those. And then at the very last page of your financials, management's already prepared essentially, and it's included with, bound with your audited financial statements, what's called a corrective action plan. And Mayor, the mayor's already provided a verbal on these as well. And we talked with them to understand kind of the plan of how they plan to address these. And I know these have already been put into place as well, but I'm just gonna pause here if there's any other comments that the mayor wanted to add to this maybe.
None for me. Any questions from council? Please, Ms. Oh, I think on the entire audit. Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
This is a question I've had through the years reading the audits online. So page 10, excuse me, under budgeted amounts, you have original budget. So on that, total revenues down there is 10,231,230 as the original. But the actual original ordinance that was passed establishing the budget was $9,252,956. So there's about $1 million difference there. Now I assume that that's additional monies that were spent through the year by the council. But I'm just wondering why it says original budget when the original budget is actually considerably less.
So what may have happened, and if there's a member of management that wants to answer, please jump in. But so when you budget, your budget a lot of times covers the general fund, but then it also is done on a departmental basis. And so there, while you may have budgeted some departments separately from this for reporting purposes. So for example, the ARPA funds were combined into your general fund. So I believe you had kind of like a separate department or budget for the ARPA funds, the 240,000 that was expended. So for reporting purposes, it got incorporated into the general fund and is included as part of the public works function expenditures, since it was the water meters that were purchased essentially with those funds. And then that federal funding is included up in here. And so what we do is we work with management to determine which kind of departments basically need to collapse together from the accounting records essentially into these numbers. And these numbers come from the budgets that are in your accounting system. And then we tie those back to your approved budget. But it may include a few things that in your budget were separate. And I can work with management if you need a answer, we can kind of get that at some point after the meeting to provide that breakdown if you'd like.
I can get that from our CFO when she's back from vacation. The other question I had is that, well, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. It appears that we took in $3.5 million more over the original, actually $4.5 million over the original estimated revenue, $3.5 million over the original budgeted amount that you have here. Is that correct?
Right, and if my screen's still showing, you'll see up under revenues, the legal settlement was not a formal budget amendment wasn't done for the acceptance of the legal settlement or the $1 million expense related to paid out of that settlement. And so you're right, the bottom line under this actual change, you had a change in net assets basically of 3.5 million. And we can look right here and see 3 million of it was the settlement. And then the other increase that you had more than budgeted, this 135, a lot of times with the state of Alaska, that relates to what's called your on behalf payment. And that is the amount that the state contributes into your pension and OPEB plans on behalf of the city. And so that gets recorded for financial reporting purposes as both revenue and expense. And so a lot of cities don't necessarily budget for that because they just wait till that comes in and then record it. And so I know that's a portion of your revenue changes. You can see the other, your actual compared to your final budget for revenue. These are the other variances. And then this significant, it looks like a significant amount being spent over the appropriated expenses for general government. Again, that overage is coming from, there was the $1 million of legal expense that was included in that function.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Moving on, Karen.
Okay, great. Well, I was going to just touch briefly on your financial statements themselves. So again, using the table of contents, our opinion covers what's called your basic financial statements. So it's these statements through your notes. So you have your government-wide statements, which are your, and then you have your fund statements. And so again, just a real quick rebrief is that the statement of net position, so your government-wide, collapses everything that's governmental into one column called governmental activities, and your water and sewer is your business type activities. And the basis of presentation for your government-wide financial statements is what's called full accrual. And so that differs from the fund presentation in that this includes long-term debt and longer-term assets. So for example, your OPEB asset, which again, that amounts coming from the state, but those amounts are included in your governmental activities. They're not included in your fund financial statements. And then also capital assets are the other large thing that on your fund financial statements, when you are expending money for a capital asset, it just shows as an expense. But in financial reporting under the full accrual, you actually have to capitalize that and depreciate it over time. The other part of this is debt in your fund financial statements. Debt payments or the receipt of debt is just a proceeds from debt issuance. And then as you pay it, it's just an expense. Both principal and interest is expensed. And in our government-wide financial statements, the principal portion of your debt shows on your balance sheet. And so to assist with kind of understanding those differences, here, I'm going to just jump real quick. There's a reconciliation, which basically shows you the differences between the fund financial statements and your government-wide. But I suggest most of the time that while the government-wide provides some good, useful information, most governments are used to looking at the fund financial statements. It's how your records are maintained in your accounting system. It's also typically how you budget. It's called modified accrual basis. So again, this is your balance sheets of the governmental funds. Key things here to take away is, especially on your fund balance by fund, how much is committed already, how much is restricted, unspendable. I mentioned that the debt service fund does have a deficit in it right now. And then as far as looking at what changed during the year, that would be your governmental fund statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. We looked at already the operating fund, general fund. You're able to look and see like what the revenue, significant revenues were. And then again, expenses are on a functional basis as far as how they're presented. And then again, the change in that fund balance and your ending fund balance. So we already looked real quick at page 10, which is a required schedule of your original, final, actual. And then for your water and sewer fund, again, that's what's called an enterprise fund. And so this is the balance sheet. So, you know, a lot of your assets are related to the capital assets of your water and sewer fund. And then so while you have a large net position or equity, a lot of that 87 million of the 91 is related to your capital assets. Looking at the activity that happened in the year, your charges for services, as well as you had a little bit of that on behalf or PERS relief fund come in. These are your expenses, basically operating expenses. So your operating expenses exceeded your revenues by about 6 million. You also had some non-operating revenues expenses. So overall reduction of net position about 5.5 million. And this is the fund that had the restatement. So we did show that restatement for the depreciation. So another statement that's useful when looking at an enterprise fund, because enterprise funds account for things on the full accrual basis, is the statement of cash flows. So this shows you, this is what you got from customers, amounts paid out. These are the other activity that basically cash is being used to pay for debt or acquire assets. And so it comes down and it showed you that you used you started the year with 6.4 million, you used 2.1 million of it, you're left with 4.2. The bottom reconciles and says this was the loss per your income statement, and then it walks through these are non-cash costs, your depreciation, so it's being added back in. These are change in balance sheet accounts. Again, this is reconciling that from operations used 2.3 million. So it's another way to just kind of look at the activity that happened in that fund. I always joke that if you need help sleeping, read the notes to your financial statements, but actually they're really good. And, you know, not just an accountant saying that, it's a great way to get more familiar with your city and the way things are reported. I just have 3 notes I'm going to highlight, and then we can go to questions again. Note 17, which is the very last note. Again, we touched on this already, but this is the disclosure related to that change in net position. So it shows what was originally reported last year, the correction, and the restatement. Note 16, we touched on the federal funding freeze. So this is what's called a subsequent event. So something happened after year end, before we issued the financial statements, that management felt was significant enough to want to disclose it. And so basically, again, with everything happening at the federal level, there's uncertainty related to possibly assistance you've already been awarded or future assistance. And there's no adjustments in your financial statements as a result of that uncertainty. But again, it was significant enough management wanted to include that comment, or that note rather. And then the last one I'm going to touch on, and this is just informational for you, is, there's upcoming accounting pronouncements. So I touch on these just for the fact that as we talked about, management does use the services of another accounting firm. I would recommend doing that. I think, you know, just to have that other set of eyes, and especially ones that are used to kind of the financial reporting requirements of a city, is important to have them involved periodically, since while your staff are great at keeping up with the day-to-day, they may not necessarily be keeping up with the complexities of the financial reporting, which we have to for audit purposes. And so having them have that resource of another firm that can assist them as they're implementing new accounting standards, or maybe even going back and looking at those uniform guidance procedures and comparing them to their current procedures, that other firm who also does audits and is going to be knowing kind of what you're going to be held accountable for, is going to be able to provide be a resource to the city and to help you address upcoming changes and issues related to updating your policies and procedures. So that was it for my presentation. I'm sorry I did take longer than intended, but hopefully that's useful information. And I do want to make sure I have thanked Tricia, Michelle, Melanie, everyone there at the city was very happy to provide us information. It's never fun, people asking lots of questions about what you did and why you did it, and can you please provide, another piece of documentation to show us that. So I appreciate their patience and professionalism in dealing with the audit. And also just a reminder that we are available, granted, we're not there in North Pole, but we're available by phone or Zoom or Teams. Anytime you guys have questions, we're happy to help if we can. So with that concludes my remarks. But again, I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Please, go ahead.
If we can go back to page 12, I'm just curious on the depreciation under the sewer. This year is 1.65 million. Last year it was only 833,000. Why did it double in 1 year? Usually depreciation goes down as an asset approaches zero. So
this is, I am on page, let me see,
12.
25 right now. And so this is the schedule of for your business type activities, essentially. So this is showing your balance and additions and transfers, deletions, transfers, and the ending balances. And so your total depreciation for the year was this 6.1. And you're saying that you're looking at
on page 12,
12.
Under operating expenses for the sewer, the depreciation this year was $1.65 million.
Yep. So one of the things that we helped the city with this year is that the schedules that spreadsheets basically that are used to keep track of all the different assets, we helped the city go back through those and look at how the assets were split up between water and sewer. And we found that or management found that some of the assets had kind of the allocation between water or sewer had been inconsistent. And so it did result in a kind of reclassification of whether an asset was water or sewer, and therefore then the depreciation related to that asset changed in classification as far as being water or sewer.
Okay,
In
so
addition,
that's why the water depreciation went down so much and the sewer went up. Okay,
Correct.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions?
I do have another question.
Sure.
This debt service fund. Can you explain that to us? I'm looking at page 60 and you referred to that earlier. So we're not paying that down fast enough, you're saying?
Well, so what it is, and let me get it on the screen because then everyone can see it. So this is your debt service fund. And so you did do special assessment and you're collecting those special assessments. But your debt payments, so this year principal and interest, is about 102,000, obviously far exceed what you're bringing in for the special assessment. And so that happened, it's happened over the last few years. And so again, you have a deficit, and then this year, you're adding another $77,000 loss to that deficit. So you ended the year with 115,000. And so next year, or FY25, you're in right now, your debt service payment, that has one payment left on that debt, it's 100,000. And so right now, knowing that, even if your assessment collections are about the same in FY25, you're going to end up adding about another $77,000 or $75,000 loss, to this deficit, right? And then, so you think about that, you'll end up with about a $200,000 deficit at the end of 25. and you're bringing in about 25,000 a year in special assessments. So it's going to take you a long time to get rid of that deficit. And so that was kind of the recommendations, just to just look at it and think through, you know, I know you got the legal settlement this year, that per your attorney is unrestricted as far as, you know, how you use that money. And it may be that you want to transfer part of that money to the debt service fund to essentially make this deficit go away.
That's what my question was, if that would be appropriate. I mean, we have reserves of $4.3 million in the enterprise fund, if we could use that money, because it looks like we're paying about 8% on interest on the principal on this. If we could just make that go away, but still continue to collect the special assessments, is that a good path forward?
I would have to research to make sure you could do that. That's definitely something management will want to look into. But again, that's unrestricted. The reason I thought of the legal settlement in the operating fund is it's unrestricted funds. And so you as a council could decide to use that how you see fit. And so I don't believe from looking at your you know, your charter, your code, I don't think there's anything to prevent you from doing a transfer from the operating fund to the debt service fund to cover that deficit. If I think then in turn, if you were to cover that whole deficit, you would have to then determine that as you continue to collect on those special assessments, then where does that money go, right? What is the restriction on those funds once they came in? So, you know, there's never an easy answer to anything. You know, you fix one thing and it creates another question, another thing to research. But it was mostly just to make sure that you guys were looking at this and looking at maybe what the different options were. You know, if you're going to carry it forward and just let the special assessments kind of whittle away and eventually the fund will be, you know, back to a positive amount, that's fine. But it was just we felt like some additional analysis of the fund and kind of what the plans were should be done.
I have one last quick question of you. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but it's something that I've been asking for many years and I don't have an answer to. But do you have an opinion or any guidance on how much money a city our size with our budget should have in its unrestricted or unassigned general fund balance?
It's a good question, and a lot of people ask.
Not including the enterprise fund, just for our general fund.
Right. So what I pulled up here is your general fund. And so this is non-spendable. And so that's your prepaid. So you already paid out money for certain expenses. They're prepaid expenses. So that portion of your equity is considered non-spendable because you already spent it. These are committed. So committed is where there is a external requirement on how those get expended, right? And then you have your unassigned. And unassigned really is unassigned, unrestricted. And so one thing to consider there is what your operating expenses are. And if we look at your governmental funds and we look at basically you are spending, and granted last year if we back the $1 million out, because this includes $1 million of your legal settlement, so you'd be around 9 million. So of your balance sheet, your unassigned is just under 1 year's worth of spending. But then you kind of have to take almost a bigger picture of it of, well, we also have a deficit over here, right? So if you were going to use some of the funds, that might you might want to cover that. You also have to look at if federal funding is going down and if you have significant capital projects, deferred maintenance, repairs and maintenance, you know, that you know are coming up. You know, again, how much of this, while it may not have gone through a budgeting process yet, But how much do you feel like maybe already has purpose in the future that you're going to need to make sure that you're holding on to, right? And then rule of thumb, and this again is typically more in a nonprofit world. We always tell people to have 3 to 6 months of expenses as a cushion. And what that allows you to do is it gives you that 3 to 6 months if revenues were to change drastically, it gives you that time period where you can kind of keep working at the same level. You don't have to cut services immediately. It gives you that 3 to 6 months to make adjustments basically for whatever your new situation is. So again, we talked about, this right now is giving you, roughly 12 months of based on your spending for last year in the operating fund. And so a lot of that would be kind of an evaluation of what maybe is out there that is coming, and then how much does that really give you left over that's unassigned. But with the uncertainty on the federal side of things, again, you're not, a lot of other governments are very grant dependent. And that's one thing, you don't have a lot of grant funding kind of within your general fund. And so you could probably not have as big a cushion, or you wouldn't maybe have the risk essentially of your grants changing. You are taxed based though, right? So if the economy were to get worse and people quit paying their taxes, so you quit having that cash come in, how much do you want to make sure you have kind of available to continue spending while you deal with less cash coming in for taxes, right? So it's there's no easy answer about what the right number is. There's a lot of factors that come into play, but at least giving yourself, we use kind of that 3 to 6 month. And again, we just, rough calculation of that is just taking your annual expenditures, divide by 12, gives you a monthly amount, and then looking at, well, what's 3 to 6 months of that monthly amount.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very tough question, and I'm glad or happy that you gave us your insight. I know the GFOA recommends 2 to 6 months of operating expenses in the unrestricted balance fund, and we have 12. And I was just wondering if you thought that was adequate, or if, in your opinion, we needed more.
I think it's, I think a lot of it is what do you see coming up in the future, right? So if you have some big projects you're going to do, then obviously you would want to be building up those net positions so that you can transfer that money out to a capital project fund, for example. Or if you've committed match for a grant, you want to make sure that you've provided that you have those funds available to make that match transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Karen, thank you for all you and your team do for the city of North Pole and putting this together. Thank you for always being available to answer our questions whenever we have that. We appreciate it. And we look forward to September, October check-in.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, and appreciate everyone's attention. I know the audit isn't always the most exciting thing to hear about, so I appreciate it, and I hope the rest of your meeting goes well.
Thanks for being with us this evening. Take care. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, and with that moves us right on to mayor's comments. I have attended quite a few things here in the last couple of weeks. I want to mention and just drop on a few of those. The VFW annual meeting was held here in North Pole, which is pretty awesome. It was their 80th statewide convention. Pretty important to have things like that come to our town. It brought in people from all over the state. And it was great to see that gathering and enjoy that. I get invited to a lot of things, and I try and attend as much as I possibly can. The Alaska Air National Guard holds a special place in my heart. But they're just wonderful folks out there, and I love the fact that they are so family oriented. They invited me out to Family Day out at Chena Lakes, and I was their watermelon eating contest judge, along with Colonel Griesbaum and another major, and it's nice that at every opportunity they try and involve local government, and that's a good relationship that we really need to have with our military installations. Attended the Fast Planning Improvement Subcommittee along with Tim to nominate projects on behalf of the greater North Pole area and the city of North Pole. We identified quite a few issues and lack thereof that we really haven't had funding in the past years. And we're trying to make up for that with some pretty big asks and make that happen. But dollars for dimes, North Pole's kind of been left on the side of the road because we're a 15-minute drive out, I think. And it's time to try and claw back and get a little bit more piece of the pie when it comes to fast planning. Attended the chamber luncheon along with Anton for the gas line information hour with Governor Dunleavy. It very insightful and very exciting time for our state. If that gas line really does go through, it will be another mini pipeline for our entire area. Tim and I attended a couple of DSIP webinars and working through that. Last night, I had the honor of attending, even though it was Father's Day, the Executive Observer Program. So it's all on red flag. They fly up generals, colonels. I had the pleasure of sitting next to a 2-star general from Bangladesh, a 1-star general from Thailand, and a 1-star general from Sri Lanka. A little bit of a language barrier at times. Along with my equipment ears, very hard of hearing. I felt bad having to ask people to repeat what they said, but we got through it, and it was a great time. I did present those folks with some North Pole coins and some pins that they graciously accepted and were excited to have. They were happy that we had those to present, and they treasure it like a true honor. We received a letter from the North Pole Grad Bash thanking us for our donation. Typically, we donate $1,000 to the Grad Bash every year, but with this being the first graduating class at North Pole High School, where the Eielson Ravens and the North Pole High School kind of gathered up and graduated all from North Pole, we as a group decided to donate $1,000 to them in support of keeping our graduating seniors safe for the Grad Bash, and that went a long way to helping them out. With that, I guess any questions of the mayor? Oh, same time.
I was just point.
Oh, okay,
Can you
perfect.
tell us
Go
what
ahead.
projects you recommended to the FAST committee?
We talked about the walking path on 8th Avenue and how deteriorated that is. I mean, it's difficult to walk that path. It is paved, but there's missing chunks. So we're hoping that they can remove that, grind it up, and then repave. We're looking at a crosswalk on 5th Avenue across from, or crossing the Old Rich. We asked them to come out and take a look at the roundabouts for a mill and repave along with Santa Claus Lane. We had them look at 5th Avenue. We also had them look at the bike path or walking path from 5th Avenue all the way down to Psalms Boulevard and wrapping that back from Psalms Boulevard back to St. Nicholas in front of the Three Bears, so that those people who live in that neighborhood could walk a really nice 1.5 to 2 mile block and be on paved ground. Tim, am I missing anything? I know we talked about a lot of different projects there. Oh, Cary Avenue. So at the request of our new chief, he would like to close off the area behind the police station. And to do that, we have to have a thoroughfare. So we're looking at, through fast transportation dollars, being able to pave this section of Cary that would then run up in between the old Wendy's and the Mount McKinley Bank, so that there was a thoroughfare without having to have a turnaround. We have a turnaround on the other side in our parking lot. So once that project is completed, we should be able to fence that off and have that gated and have a little bit more protection for our police.
For additional parking? Is that the idea?
No, nope. Well, yes and no. It is
I mean, parking for the police vehicles.
security for police vehicles. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. With that moves us on to citizens' comments. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up?
I have nobody that signed up online. If there's any person in the council chambers wishing to speak to an item not on the agenda, needs to sign up on the list located on the public testimony table. Respectful standards of decorum and courtesy should be observed by all speakers. Remarks should be directed to the council as a body rather than any one member of the council or staff, and are limited to 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Rolfe. Good evening. Good to see you again, sir.
Hi.
Please state your name and your general location.
I'm Adam Rolfe. I live on Lake Drive. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been doing public records requests to try to get a better understanding of police involvement in the community and how we can curb excess speeds in our neighborhoods. Come to my attention that we have 3 sites around North Pole that have the "your speed" signs are, that we aren't able to collect data on. Doing further research, I have found that's not actually true. There's no way to disable it per the manual of the manufacturer. So I'm trying to find out why we are not utilizing that as a asset to kind of figure out where our hotspots are and when we should have patrols or speed traps, or however you want to phrase it. Another question is, it's my understanding that the city of North Pole has 4 extra signs that are sitting on a shelf somewhere that are due to go out this summer. Do we know a time frame on when that might happen, or where they're going to go, other than where they're going to go? I would like to also kind of investigate whether there's any plan from the council or North Pole PD to curb, or other solutions to curb speeding in neighborhoods, not just mine, but all throughout North Pole, whether that's temporary speed bumps so that we can remove them come fall, or whether that's your speed signs that we can actually monitor and track and get okay, these are our hotspots, these are when we need to focus on these areas, or any other solutions that you guys may have for this. I've seen more North Pole PD driving around the neighborhoods, or at least my neighborhood, which is great. I do appreciate that. But I still do see people, or my perceived people, speeding through because I don't actually know what their speed is. Trying to hope to see what we can do to resolve this issue.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Mr.
I
Grant.
just want to let you know, I did talk to Chief Smith after the last meeting about temporary speed bumps. And he seemed to think that was a good idea, that, but it's kind of a crossover between him and Public Works. So I did speak to Tim this evening about that also. So we are going to be looking into the temporary speed bumps. I think that your idea of using the speed limit signs and collecting data, maybe we can use those in conjunction with the speed bumps to see if they actually are doing any good. Having this data, whether or not permanent speed bumps would be a good solution or not. And then with the temporary speed bumps, we can move them around the city in different areas, and they're surprisingly affordable. They were like $120 a piece or something like that. So it's not a very big monetary outlay to try something to solve this problem. So we are working on it.
Any other questions?
I just have a couple, and I know you talked about it last time too, but what do you think the percentage of people speeding live in the neighborhood versus school buses? And is there a lot you can identify that's like, hey, that they live 4 houses down?
So there are some of that, but I also, some of it's guests that come to visit those houses, some of it's the school buses. I don't really,
Yeah, to Mr. Brand's point, on Homestead, we have a your speed sign and speed bumps, so you might be able to get some of that data already. It's interesting because what I see is a lot of people slow down for the speed bumps, speed up, slow down, and so, yeah, it's an interesting point. There's also times where I'm out working in the yard, I'm like, gosh, this car's flying, and I go look at the your speed sign, and they're doing like 2 over or something. I'm like, well, like I guess they weren't. So perception, I'm not saying you're wrong, or
Right.
I'm not saying people don't, speed there, but those signs are helpful, and so, yeah, I think that's important.
and mine is mostly perceived, because I just don't know.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else online, Madam Clerk?
I still don't have anybody online, and is there anybody else in chambers that would like to testify?
Okay,
Looks like no.
with that, it moves us right on to communications from department heads. And since our HR department is here, does HR department have a report this evening?
I actually do. I wrote it down. I spent last week, Sunday through Friday, at the Northwest Clerks Institute 2025 Professional Development 2. This is an accredited institute by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks, where over 60 clerks from Alaska, Washington, and Oregon gather to live together on campus at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, to learn, share, and collaborate. Throughout the 6 days, the most positive and beneficial sessions for me were on time management, municipal records management, supervision and collaboration, human resources, power talks, leadership, crisis communications, and emergency preparedness, and creating a personal vision statement. I am grateful for this opportunity, both as a valuable standalone training for the benefit of the city and department, and the credit earned as I work towards my certified municipal clerk certification through the IIMC. And I really am grateful and thankful for the opportunity to go. I went last year for the professional development 1, and it's great. It's 6 full days of learning.
Glad you were able to attend. That's super awesome.
I just wanted to remind everybody first, to all you dads out there, happy late Father's Day. Thank you. Candidate filing is coming up. It's going to be the 15th through the 29th of July. I'm hoping that there's many people in this chamber that are going to come get applications from me. Looking at everyone. And then I also just wanted to say that with Maggie back, next week I'm going to take off. There's no council meetings and no staff meetings. If there's an emergency, I'm available, but otherwise, next week I will be on vacation.
Okay, thank you. Chief?
Hey, good evening, Mayor, council members. So from the fire department, today we started our annual hydrant testing. This afternoon, they were out and about and starting to get those done. We expect them to be out over the next week and a half, doing the hydrant testing. It's great weather for that because you quite often get wet doing it. So it's a great time for our staff to be out checking the hydrants, making sure they're performing up to the specs that we require to be able to utilize them if we ever have to. So if you see any issues out there, feel free to get a hold of me at the fire station. But our staff have got it down to a science, doing it every year. They're pretty darn good at their jobs, and hydrant testing is just one thing they've perfected over the years. So, with this warmer weather, burn permits have been suspended by state forestry, and until further notice, all burning has been suspended by state forestry. So, if you do by chance have an active burn permit, you can call the number still, but it will tell you that no burning is allowed. And if you do not have a burn permit, I highly recommend you get one if you ever plan on burning, because it'll give you all of the appropriate data information you need to burn safely, burn correctly, and let you know when and when you cannot burn. So they're free to get. You can get them right online. You don't even have to come to the fire station anymore. They're super simple and easy. And then along with, burn suspensions, now we're getting closer to fireworks season. Hopefully we'll get some change in weather before the 4th of July. So our vendors are allowed by ordinance to start sales on June 20th, and they can sell through July 7th. We'll be watching the weather, watching what's going on with state forestry and any wildland activities out there, and making the normal calls that we do every year, whether we're going to allow them to open or not. So as of right now, we'll just wait the weather and see what happens. So hopefully we get a little bit of change in weather to where we can enjoy our 4th of July with some fireworks. That's all I have for tonight. I can take any questions.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to have for you tonight, about the possibility of suspending fireworks sales, if you'd looked into that, but it sounds like you have.
Yes, definitely. And it's still a little early. Most of the vendors don't want to open right on the first day. June 20th is when they're allowed to legally. Traditionally, they never open that early. And so we've got a little bit of time for the weather to change. Foreseeable forecast is a lot of the same, but it won't stay like this, I hope, through July 4th. So hopefully we'll get there.
And are we still on for open house on July 12th?
July
Is that
12th.
correct?
Yep. July 12th is our open house at the fire station. So everybody can mark their calendars, come by. We'll have our normal events, and hopefully we do have good weather that day. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Director of City Services.
Hello. So for the utilities, the water main replacement phase 1, the design has been approved by the Department of Environmental Conservation, which means RESPEC is now working on our 100% design construction documents. So those should be coming out pretty quick. And we need that so that the DSIP grant that we're working on, it has to be shovel ready. So it'll be nice to have that paperwork before we finish these grant applications. The construction estimate's about $7 million for phase 1. And that'll be 9,120 feet of 6, 8, and 10-inch ductile iron pipe and 16 fire hydrants. So you guys can play with those maybe. And then something that came up last council meeting that I'd never heard of, never thought of, but ever since then it's come up a few times, is the idea of selling the utilities. I didn't know that was a thing, but I just want to let you guys know that I'm going to look into the process and what it's going to take if we were to entertain the idea of doing it. So that's all above board. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. If somebody has a problem with me looking into that, please let me know. If not, I'm just going to get some information so that if we're going to discuss it, we can discuss it with actual information. For the building department, I did a walk around with the Department of Transportation for those 5 potential roads and trails projects that Mayor Church was talking about. The Cary Avenue paving and the 8th Avenue walking park were tentatively accepted and potentially going to go into construction next summer. And then the other 3 we just brought up 2 weeks ago. So we did the walkthrough and they got some measurements and I told them exactly what we're looking for. So they're going to create some estimates, and then at our next meetings, we'll be able to discuss and see if we can get a couple more of these projects through. And then I've been going through our website forms and the codes for the building department, trying to clean things up and update stuff because nobody's was in my position for a little while. So I've been working with all the other departments to get that cleaned up and more accurately represent who we are and what we do. For Public Works, we just rebuilt a couple of skateboard ramps for the skate park and just they're going to go back out tomorrow morning. So if somebody's excited about going skateboarding, they can go try out the new ramps. And we are currently working with the local Girl Scout troop to install a memorial bench in the Terry Miller Park for their troop leader who recently passed. So that would be nice to have a good place for them for the little girls to go and remember her. And then I've got a letter I'd like to quickly read from a citizen that came into Public Works. It said, "This is a much delayed thank you for all the winter plowing and gravel that happened this winter. I always count on cleared roads and or gravel for safety when traveling through North Pole area. Thank you." I just thought that was important. It's not winter now, but our guys do a really good job apparently. Any questions? Lots of them. I'm ready.
First of all, if you had anything to do with this screen, thank you very much.
Oh,
The one
not
on the
me.
door there.
No.
So apparently the day after you were out there with DOT, I ran into a young lady named Stacia with DOT that was out doing some measurements out there on Blanket.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, you know, what she was doing and she filled me in on the different projects and stuff. But one of the things that she mentioned was that from 8th Avenue to the Blanket Boulevard extension,
Right.
the walking path there or the bike path, whatever you want to call it, would not be eligible for FAST because they would have to come in and cut down trees and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I asked her if we were to have Public Works come and do that, do the brushing out, cutting down trees, brushing out, would that make it eligible? And she said possibly. So that's something to look into.
Yeah, so we would have to actually turn it into a walking path. So not just cut down the trees, but we'd have to dig up and put gravel and everything. So we'd basically have to mimic what Jerry and his guys did on the extension and on Psalms in order for it, because that walking path barely qualifies because it's not the 6-foot wide requirement. And the idea is that they can just come in and either tear up old and then resurface it or just put new surface down. So there'd be a little bit more to it than cutting down trees, but we can definitely look into that. And they also wouldn't be able to do the Busby side that Mayor was talking about, connecting Psalms over to St. Nick, because there's not a current bike path there. So
Right.
those two sections of that, we would have to find funding some other way or figure something else out. But they were pretty excited about the Blanket extension and the Psalms section being so pristine and ready for them to come in and do it.
So you did talk to Jerry about that, and they are not going to pave that?
No, they're not. And I've got a lot of documents I can.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
in the future, I think that just changing the name of the sidewalk to a walking path and not paving it does not bring it up to current city standards. We don't have any non-paved walking paths in the city. So just for future development, if there is any, I would just keep that in mind.
Right. I think if in the design process, if we'd have brought up the fact that we wanted to make them pave it, they just wouldn't have put the walking path in. Right. Because that's just a thing that they paid for and they're donating to the city just because they want to design the best subdivisions. So it's not a requirement.
Okay. It was my understanding under the original agreement that
Right.
sidewalks would have to be provided. That was my understanding from my time on the planning commission. So but that was a long time ago. Things changed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have just a couple.
Yeah.
Where are we at on building permits for the year? How many building permits are out right now for new construction?
Somewhere probably 3 or 6.
Okay.
For residential?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious, and you might not be up to speed on it. They've been doing some surveying in the last couple of years for a drainage issue, kind of in like the Ford subdivision.
Mhm.
And I saw them out surveying, it was either last summer or the year before. And I'm just curious if there was ever a report on that or there's a plan. But every year it's a problem in the city. Actually, I purchase a lot to try and help, and we had a pretty minimal snow year, and it was still a problem. And so I remember whatever it was 3, 4 years ago, it being a real problem. So I just curious if anything ever happened with that, if maybe you could look into that.
Yeah, you're talking about Ford?
The Ford Homestead,
Homestead and First Avenue.
yeah, is the worst of it there.
If I can address that, we actually have a grant set up, $752 or $753,000 through Protect, that was on hold to all of the voluntary retirements or whatever you want to call it, easements that they had. But just last week, we got an email from those folks saying that they're back in the office, they're back working, and sent over a draft grant agreement. So hopefully next council meeting or the council meeting after, we'll see that finalized and have that brought before council so we can start doing some of that work to improve the drainage. And that goes also to out here by the middle school.
Yeah.
Over on Patriot, and that drainage ditch that and then all of Ford.
Yeah.
Down Homestead, to try and improve that. And driving over in that neighborhood, it is interesting that some of the culverts are there, some of the culverts aren't. I don't know if it's just ground moving or people never put them in, but there's a new rock ditch line that's absolutely beautiful, but there's no culvert under the driveway. So they did all that work without being able to allow that proper drainage to happen. So it can't hit that lot that we bought to drain into the ground. And Ford subdivision is certainly one that Tim and I have talked about trying to make happen, to clean out the culverts in there and let those property owners know if they don't have culverts. It is a requirement. If they do have culverts, they need to clean them out and maintain them so that water can free flow when we have those seasonal water issues.
One other thing quick while we're on that, there is some new construction happening outside of city limits, but that's going to increase a lot of traffic through West First. Their only options are going to be Homestead or the Boulevard. And so I think a lot of them are going to be cutting down West First. And so I think that's just something to keep an eye on traffic wise. And there's already a lot of speeders. And so, there's a lot of problem spots, but I think that one will get even worse. And then real quick, last thing. I think it was probably your first meeting. I brought up just the idea of looking at switching some of the city buildings to gas.
Right.
And I know we probably don't have boilers that could be converted, but I think it'd just be worth exploring.
Right. Yeah. That's still on the list.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I haven't forgot about it.
Yeah.
It's just a long list.
Thanks.
Okay, Chief?
Well, good evening to all. I have a pretty short report for you tonight. First of all, very thankful for how the hiring went with the new lieutenant, and I have great confidence in his success going forward. Just some stats for you folks. So summer's in full swing. We always see an increase of all kinds of stuff during the summer because people are just out and about more. So for the month of May, we had 618 total calls for the entire department for the month. That includes both self-initiated and calls from the public. So that's roughly 61 calls per officer for the month, which is a pretty good level of activity. It's doubled since about 2018. but it's comparable to what we saw last year at this time of year. 11 arrests. We did have an increase of what are called Part 1 crimes, which include things like assault and larceny. In this case, the increase came from several additional larcenies or shopliftings that we saw during the month of May, but that's not unusual. If you track the trends back over a number of years, they just fluctuate. And since we have a fairly small, thankfully, crime total, very small numbers of increase that percentage pretty drastically because it's a small data set. Yeah, other than that, things are going well operationally. Tomorrow we'll be taking part in 10 hours of training. We got our new virtual reality system in that the grant purchased. That's pretty sweet. I've been looking at that and charging it up today. So hopefully we don't get too nauseous because I've tried those and you do have to acclimate to them a little bit, but we're going to have a representative from the companies coming up, actually from Australia tomorrow. And he's going to train us on that. So that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Sure.
Mr. Brandt.
I do just want to echo what Mr. Wolf said earlier about noticing increased patrolling. I've mentioned it to you last meeting also that I have noticed a big uptick in patrolling. So thank you for talking to your officers about that. And that includes the day after the last meeting when I saw you cruising by on your electric scooter. And
yep, that was a pretty
thanks for
fun
stopping
day.
and talking to us. That was nice. And then also today, out and about on the Harley. That's I think just being seen out like that is good for the community. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I need the practice if I'm going to drive it in the parade. So, I would just on a note regarding some of the questions that were asked, since you're kind of keying off of that, both council members and the members of the public are always welcome to come to my office and have open discussions, collaborative, work together. I generally find that's the most effective means of getting things done. We're all tired. It's late at night here. We don't, it's not necessarily the most effective place for that to happen. So people are welcome to do that. Additionally, I just took this position over, and my concern is that I exercise fiscal responsibility with the resources that I have. So I'm not going to make decisions based on no data or a knee-jerk reaction, because that would be unwise on my part. I'm going to seek to gather all the data I can, and then from an informed position of having that, make the wisest decision I can about where to allocate not only my officers, but also any hardware that we might have. So I just, as my philosophy going forward in decision making, that's how I'm going to approach it. There needs to be hard data showing trends, and then we can actually allocate resources that have a price tag attached to them. That's the wise way to make these types of decisions. So when I am confident in the data that we have on where the trouble spots are, I will choose where to put the signs, but I will not do it until I'm confident in it.
Okay, any other questions?
Just have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
And how do you get that data? What's an example of, is it?
Several different avenues. Obviously, you have reports that we receive, right? People see stuff, so they say stuff. We additionally have some of the hardware that's even been discussed tonight with different signs. We have one in particular that we're currently moving all around the city and gathering data at different locations. Then, of course, we have the officers out on patrol, seeing what's going on in particular areas. If you have a place that is receiving accidents and you're able to determine that's due to speed, well, that needs some additional information. So.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. That takes us on to ongoing reports. So it's the North Pole Economic Development Committee update. We had our last meeting, I believe it was the 6th. Anton, were you there for that?
No.
Okay. So we talked and identified 3 new projects moving forward that the North Pole Economic Development Committee hopes to attain. We did talk a little bit, and I want to remind those listening about the farmers market in North Pole every Friday over there from 1 to 7, I believe, is the times that they've come up with. I was over there last week, and pretty good turnout. And they got a little kids park out behind there. If we don't support it from a local level, it will disappear. So get out there, check it out, visit the vendors. Even if you don't buy anything, just show up. Or it will disappear and make a huge difference for our community. Please.
Thanks, Mayor. I was out there as well, and one of the things I got as feedback was the kids who were having fun. Some of the older kids wanted a little park kind of to play in on the off hours where there's some adults around to sort of distantly supervise them. And some of the kids were resorting to going to the car wash, putting their money in, and then fighting each other with the hoses, spraying each other. So if they have to kind of stoop to that, I think we'd be better off just having a nice park that could accommodate some of the teenagers. Thank you.
A picture or video where it didn't happen, Mr. Claus.
It happened.
Yeah, what a great way. How ingenuitive of those young folks to go over there and enjoy that and waste a little water, but pay for it at the same time. Okay, with that, that takes us to item 11, unfinished business. We have none. Item 12 is new business. 12A was consented. 12B is consented. 12C is consented. Takes us to 12D, the attorney firm selection. Prior to this meeting, we did have a work session where we interviewed 3 legal firms from around the state of Alaska to find new representation for our city. Each individual answered a bunch of questions. They sent over a huge packet with a lot of information about things that they do, what they've done, ways that they can help the city. We came up with 15 additional questions that we sent over that they answered, and then they sort of got the interview process from all of us here along with our staff. And with that, we decided to leave this on the agenda as an option. If someone would so like to move
I
to.
was just hoping we could read into the record the 3 firms before, yeah. Which first firm was JDO Law, second firm was Landai, Bennett, and Bloomstein, and the third firm was Law Offices of Guess and Rudd.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So what we're looking for is a motion, if we are going to choose one, a motion of which firm the council would like to choose.
Mayor Church, I'll make a motion.
Please.
I move that we select Landai, Bennett, and Bloomstein as the North Pole City Attorney.
Second.
Okay, discussion on them, questions about them? Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
I do not. And is there anybody in the room that would like to have testimony to this item?
Please, Mr. Claus.
I'd just like to comment that I was very pleased that all 3 firms seemed highly qualified. And even though we might have preferences for one or the other, there seems to be a little bit of consensus on the council.
Any other further discussion?
I think all 3 of them were on target that I could see. And want quantity, what is it? Quantity instead of quality. You want quality instead of quantity. Up there. Something to think about.
Yeah, I definitely will echo that consensus that it is a hard decision. There's no wrong choices here, and I'm glad that we had the availability and that they took time out of their evening to sit with us and discuss their desire to be our attorney firm. And I can't say thank you enough to all 3 firms for that. So, any other further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the acceptance of Landy, Bennett, and Bloomstein as the future city attorney, Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
and Mayor Church.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote?
And that passed with 6 affirmatives.
Okay, Madam Clerk, who drew the short straw to go first at council member comments this evening?
Would you believe the irony of it's Mr. Jacobson? So next is Mr. Schuster.
All right. Again, I hope everybody had a great Father's Day. It's my first Father's Day, and my wife decided to cook dinner for us, and she sliced her hand wide open trying to chop some onions for burgers, and it was a little bit of a disaster, but we were able to get the bleeding stopped, and so it was all good. I thought the audit was very informative. I appreciate Mr. Brandt's continued question on how much in our general fund is enough. I think it's a pretty fine line of making sure we aren't overtaxing our citizens, and making sure we have enough money, to move the city forward and take care of what we have and what we need in the future. And I think it's a really interesting discussion on what that line is and whether it's 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, 2 years, what is it, so that we can put money away for projects that we need to get done, or improve the city in some other way, or give the, citizens a break. So I think that's an interesting discussion and something, like I said last meeting, that we just can't stop thinking about and have to make a decision on. I'd like to thank Mr. Rolfe. I hope my questions weren't construed in a way that I was saying you don't have speeding in your neighborhood or anything like that. So anyway, Mayor Church, thanks for bringing us 3 qualified candidates for an attorney. I thought you did a great job. And like I said, anyone we could have chose. I feel like we made the best decision, but you brought us 3 great options. So I appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Mr. Claus.
Thank you. I wanted to mention, we brought this up last time, there's that car towing proposal that the Chamber, North Pole Community Chamber of Commerce has in conjunction with the city and the borough and a couple of towing companies to get unwanted cars towed out of properties that don't want the cars anymore, as long as the funds still remain. So it's sort of first come, first serve, and they're welcome to contact the chamber about that. Also, one thing I've been trying to do is get a bus stop for a public bus stop over at Three Bears here at North Pole, so that people that walk like I do, it's a little easier for us if we're carrying groceries or other items to get them back, whether we shop at Safeway or Three Bears or whatever. It's nice to have the bus service service those particular areas. And last but not least, I want to thank our clerk, Emily, for getting the screen, finding it, and putting it up for our chambers here so we can have a little bit of nice ventilation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Claus. I appreciate that. Mr. Williams.
I'd like to thank the mayor for bringing these 3 lawyer individuals to us. Anyone would have made it for us. Anyone. Pick and choose who we thought was best. And hopefully this individual will be around for a long time for us. So we won't have to hook and crook and look for somebody else. Happy Father's Day to everybody. And once again, I'm always long-term thinking, looking ahead, because that's where it's going to benefit us, putting the right, putting the right money out there so we can have projects to make things work for us. Because sometimes some people don't see what we see. They only think about today. So it's rough hearing the same things over all the time. We can't think about now. We got to think about down the road. About people, as well as especially the police department. That got me the other day when the chief said, getting more guys in here to work together as a team, not one person going out. It kind of struck home to me because lose a person, you lost them. And he has all over again. Somebody has to be trained all over again. It goes for our other individuals also, people that are working for us. Make they understand and keep them well employed and keep other people from what? Stealing them. That I see. Because when everything's working good, that's when people will jump in on you. That's all I got to say. I'll drop the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Keller, you're up next, and thank you for making it to the meeting today. I know you had to drive back.
It's all right. Actually that's next week, but
Oh,
so thanks to Mayor for sending out scouting out lawyers, law firms, and thanks to the law firms for putting their hat in the ring, I guess is one way to say it. Happy Father's Day. So kind of echoing here. It is summertime finally, and I am sweating like a pig. I don't do well with high heat. Summertime. I actually just floated the China for the first time this past weekend. I've been here for 7 summers. This is the first time. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was pretty fun. Brought back memories of floating the river in North Idaho where I grew up. So, um, let me see. I really like Santa's idea about a bus stop. Maybe we can work on a resolution as a city. I don't know if that's appropriate or not for the borough to look at for their planning. One little trivia for anybody who's listening. Of all the candy cane lights that we have out there, I think there's only one that's going the opposite direction with the striping. Yeah, Chief Heineken is actually like he's trying to think where it is. So those who look at the candy canes, the lights, go ahead and try to figure out where it is. Mm-hmm. You didn't think there was a right way and a wrong way, but yeah, there is. So there's some trivia for you. On a celebratory but reverence note, Mr. Tim over here mentioned the park bench at Terry Miller Park, and that's for Nikki Snow. And she's a neighbor of mine, and she leaves little kids at home and passed away from cancer. She actually came to our meeting. She was with the scout troop, Girl Scout troop. She was the one with the brace and severely burned from the treatments she was going through. So that's it hits the community pretty hard. She was a PTA president for the elementary school, heavily involved with that, heavily involved with the Girl Scouts, and she was also Air Force veteran. So my heart goes out to that family. Kind of puts things into perspective of just how quickly or how slowly things can change, and puts things in perspective of what are we doing with our lives? Are we making a change? Or are we trying to help others? Because that's definitely what Nikki does or did. So I'm hoping her ripple effects continue to go throughout generations as one that goes above and beyond with service. And I look forward to seeing what kind of beautiful bench we can put together for that park. So thank you, Tim, for that.
thank you, Mr. Keller. Mr. Brandt?
Nothing from me tonight. I've talked enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brandt. Mr. Mayor Church?
All right. Lots going on. I didn't get a chance to write proclamations for the flag football team over at North Pole High School. Last year, they took state championship, and we did celebrate. I did mention it, but I was asked to write a proclamation, which I will get to. But I do want to say congratulations to a young player there from the women's flag football team who is continuing on to college on a flag football scholarship from our city here at North Pole High School, Miss Guzman. And I hope that she is able to take a lot of the other players who helped her get there and who worked with her as a team to get to where she was at, to bring them with her as she travels outside. And I just think it's wonderful to watch girls' sports come full circle and make a difference in our community. Since we will not have another meeting before the 4th of July, I want to wish everybody a happy 4th and to enjoy that and celebrate that respectfully. Don't forget that we have a parade, and if you have kids, we will have a bike decorating contest in front of that parade. Hopefully the weather holds out, maybe not quite as hot as it is today, but if it comes anywhere near close, it is going to be an exceptional time. And then after the parade, a big gathering party down at the Grange. I know Public Works is working with the Grange to help improve that property a little bit, clean it up, and make it special for that event. Very thankful for them and all the great work that they're doing throughout our city. With that, thank you for this evening, and I would like to move to adjourn.
I'll second.
We are adjourned at 8:59.